Welcome to Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy, where love, life, and legacy meet in the moments that matter most. Every week, I will share sacred reflections of my 30-year marriage before Martin's passing, as well as our life now without him. May these reflections help us live with more weight, warmth, and wisdom. Martin was a letter carrier by profession, but a life carrier by purpose. So let's take a moment and let intentional intimacy speak. Hello. Welcome to episode 24 of Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy. Today's episode is entitled Soil Matters. And so this episode is about the soil that we grow in, because growth is not just about effort or grit or desire. Growth is a factor of our environment, our influence, and our support. And so today's episode is truly honoring someone near and dear in the Hollis household, and that is my daughter-in-law, Talina, my bonus daughter. And so her story truly reminds us that when someone believes in you long enough, consistently enough, and wisely enough, it actually changes the way that you believe in yourself. So I remember the day that my oldest son, MJ, called home to say that he had met someone. He was stationed in Oklahoma and in the military. And he's like, Mom, I really think this is the person that I want to marry. Now, it was completely unexpected to me because we hadn't talked about him seeing anyone or anything like that. But in typical, Mama P fashion, I took it in stride. What I didn't know was that God wasn't really just adding a daughter to our family, that he was actually preparing soil. And so that soil would be shaped in many ways. But one of the most influential gardeners in Talina's life was my captain, who was known as Poppy to her. And so I remember my way of getting to know Talina was, we did something called Talina Tuesdays. And on Tuesdays, we would talk and I would get to know her. I would get to ask her questions and, so forth, and getting to know her. We did Mama P Mondays where she could ask me anything, what she wanted to know to get to know me. And then on Tuesdays, I would get to know her. And so we did this over several weeks, just kind of getting to know one another before we physically met, and, just having conversations. And I remember saying to Martin, do you want to create something where you can begin to know her and get to know her? He said, I'll figure out something. I'll get to know her in my own way. And so I said, okay, no problem. And so I remember they did get married. And eventually they ended up moving back to New Jersey from New York. And but even before that, my husband would just have these little runoff conversations. He was always with the boys, always stern, very direct and so forth. But it was interesting to watch a different approach that he took in nurturing Talina, because we're boy moms, so we're built strong and tough. And so it was quite an adjustment for us to learn how to nurture a girl. And so I just watched Martin with patience and with understanding and with support, just having conversations. And to know my daughter-in-law, she generally is a pretty closed person when she first meets someone. But once she begins to open up, she's like a wildflower. She just, blossoms and, begins to share. And Martin was very intentional and very warm and very inviting in having conversations with her. and just providing that necessary safe space for her. And so over time, they would just have little conversations here and there. And then she began to open up. And Martin began to, she would share, about how she was a preemie and, how her childhood, some of her childhood experiences and different things and limiting beliefs that she was still trying to work through, even as an adult. And I just remember my husband just having conversations with her and sharing possibilities of things that she could do. My daughter-in-law is extremely talented as an artist. Has great talent, and my husband's like, you need to tap in to those gifts, talents, and abilities, and utilize them for the world, to see. And so he created space for her to be able to do that, and encouraged her greatly in that. And even with going to school and going to college, he encouraged her. And so she ended up launching a business, and she ended up going to college and actually graduating with honors, being recognized by the school to help other students, and to speak to those other students. I remember she had to give a speech and encourage some of the other students. And so it was just beautiful to watch her blossom and to see the influence that she was having on others, having been influenced herself. It was truly, truly a beautiful thing. And so I remember she put her science class to be the last class that she did in the final semester. Like, oh, I'm pushing the science class out. I'm like, girl, you're going to have to knock that science class out. She's like, I know, Mama P. And so I remember she had this experiment where she had to grow something in a pot. Like they had this pot and they had to plant seeds and they had to grow something and evaluate, this pot over time and to care for it and watch how it germinated and how it grew. And so, it was interesting to watch her caring for this pot and to watch the attentiveness that she applied. It reminded me so much of my husband because she was a pot that he cared for and he carefully watered and made sure she had the right environment. And now here she is mimicking and doing the same thing, which is legacy in some sort, because my husband never got to see her graduate. She was part of that class of 2022 where he had already transitioned in 2021, but yet the seeds that he had planted in her were already producing a harvest and already creating environment and place and space for others. And so I'm just excited to celebrate her this week. On the week that it airs, this is her birthday week. And so I'm excited to celebrate her life. I'm excited to celebrate what she means in my queendom, because it's nice to have somebody in my queendom. And I don't want to be just the only queen in, Hollisville. And so I'm excited about celebrating her this week and sharing this story with you all. Looking forward to reflecting on the other side. So here's my reflection with soil, and knowing that soil matters. I alluded to it a little bit during the story time, but I want to be direct now as to what soil truly means. Now, this is where the coach in me sort of rises up, because at the end of the day, what is the lesson here? The lesson is that soil matters. And ultimately, you are far more capable of doing more than what you even realize. But that growth, it doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in the right soil. What do you mean by the right soil, Coach Paula? Well, soil, S, the support that you receive. Let's be honest about that. It gives you safety to be able to grow, right? The O, the opportunities that are made available to you. They give you permission to try and perhaps even fail that first attempt in learning, right? Then the I, the influence. Influence ultimately shapes, what you believe about yourself and how you execute based on that belief. And then L is the legacy. This ensures that what you've received doesn't just stop with you, but you in turn become good soil for someone else. So think about it. Many seeds have been planted in your life, right? Some were planted a long time ago, and others were planted perhaps just recently. But right now, what determines the outcome is not the seed, but it's the environment that surrounds it. Think about Talina's science experiment. It wasn't about the seeds, it was about the environment and how they were cared for and nurtured within that environment. So I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What kind of soil are you currently planted in? That's question number 1. And question number 2, what kind of soil am I becoming for others? Yeah. So as you grow, as you bloom, and as you harvest, don't just keep it to yourself. Pay it forward. Believe in someone else. Encourage someone else. Create conditions where growth is possible. Let it be a unique and beautiful garden that is formed both within you and around you. And always remember that soil matters. Support, opportunity, influence, and legacy. Thanks so much for joining me this week, and I'll see you next week at Martin Mondays. Martin Mondays continues on Tuesday with the Tuesday Tea. Check it out and join me and take a sip. You know, Martin used to say a lot of things. Some were funny, some were wise, but one thing he often said was, wow. Wow. Just those 3 letters. It spoke volumes. It meant a lot. When he didn't know what to say, wow. When he was excited about something, wow. When he was confused, perhaps, or even frustrated, he said, wow. And you know, he's still saying wow. Through this bracelet, he's still saying wow, because he's still saying, may your whole life prove that God is good. And so in closing, that's my hope for you this week. May you have wow moments as you too are living out legacy. Live in the wow. Live in the reality of knowing that your whole life is good. Live in the heartbeat of Martin Mondays and intentional intimacy. May that anchor you in this week as you build legacy. One wow, one moment at a time. See you next week.